Hello and welcome to a humble Highland home. Thank you so much for being with me here today. Whilst it's not raining and I have a vague plan of a few bitty jobs that I want to get done in the garden, so I'm having a pottering day. No real big tasks, but lots of little jobs that I want to tick off the list. I'm slowly getting back into the routine of opening up the polytunnel and the greenhouse in the morning and closing it down in the afternoon. I do enjoy having a wee meander around the polytunnel, the greenhouse and the garden just to see how everything is and if we've had any damage from the weather overnight or any wild furry creatures or even our own feline friends. But this is when I do my job plan and what order I'm going to do everything in. Sometimes the plan works, but not always, as today is more about slowly and mindfully pottering in my happy place and bringing myself and the garden back into productivity. One thing I have been pretty consistent at doing is adding something to the compost almost every day so that I can try to produce as much of our own compost as I can. In fact, the composting area is always the first thing I get in place in any new garden so that we can start that process as soon as possible and get into the circular economy. I think today one of my jobs is going to be pruning my blackcurrant and blueberry bushes along with the apple trees and also taking some hardwood cuttings. Winter is the best time to prune blackcurrant and blueberry bushes as well as apple and pear trees, whereas any fruits that have got a centre stone, they're best to be pruned late in summer or just after harvesting. I'm also thinking about moving this blackcurrant bush to a sunnier spot whilst it's still dormant, but it's not on today's list. As this Braeburn apple tree gets stronger, I'll be removing the tree supports from around it so that it can continue building its own root system strength and not become too reliant on the supports. This was the first apple tree that I planted in the ground here. I think that would have been 4, maybe 5 years ago, and the Braeburn would have been 3, maybe 4 years ago. But the apple tree that I have in the pot at the back, I've had for many, many years, and it's seen a few house moves. These black buckets and some others that I've got dotted around the garden had multiple edibles growing in them last year. They had broccoli, purple sprouting broccoli or sprouts in the centre as the main plant. Then around the sides there was a mixture of salad leaves and leeks, multiple harvests from a small space. They are looking a bit sorry for themselves now and need a good tidy up. Then I'm going to put them on one side and get them ready for this year's plantings. I'll top up the compost in the buckets for the growing season ahead, and then I'll maybe look to changing a good part of the compost for the next growing season just to add some more nutrients into it. I aim to use most of the buckets this year to plant our carrots, as last year we had some signs of carrot fly damage on some of our carrots planted outside, even though I'd taken the usual precautions planting carrots in between garlic and onions, and we had lots of marigolds planted about. I maybe wasn't as vigilant putting the EnviroMesh over the top of the carrots as they were growing last year. So this time I thought I would plant the carrots in the buckets to keep them a little bit higher up and away from the ground. Now I know that carrot fly are not strong in flight, so hopefully by planting off the ground in the black buckets, and I'll maybe add an onion set or two, then that'll confuse them even more and we might get some healthier looking carrots this growing season. Now, I've not planted any pea seeds yet, but I drew up my approximate planting plan this morning, which means that I need to move the pea support frame along a row. And once I've got more cable ties, I will put up the second frame that I have, and I'll be putting that in the next row, offsetting the frames, making the most of the sunlight, hopefully anyway. I've mentioned in previous videos that these frames were only supposed to be a temporary frame that Adam quickly put together about 6 years ago now, and I've used them in various different ways, side by side, offset, and just one at a time. They are not the easiest things to handle, especially by yourself, but they work for us just now. I've still got some leeks growing in this bed, some of which will find their way into our kitchen, and others I will purposely leave them to go to seed so that I can harvest the seed, save it, ready for replanting. The way things are at the moment, we never know what's going to happen with our seed availability in the future, so I do like to add to my wee seed stash year on year. As I've said in other videos, this is just part of our growing circular economy and building resilience in uncertain times. And it saves us money in the long run. Next on today's little list is I've got some seeds and onion sets to plant. But first, I want to clean the trays and modules that I'm going to be using. Never a favourite job, but hopefully this will help get my seeds and sets off to a good start. Whilst the trays and the modules drain and dry off, I'm going to do some winter pruning that I spoke about earlier. And always my starting point is to clean and sterilise my secateurs. This is something I advocate to do anyway, but especially when moving between each pruning task to prevent spreading any fungal issues or diseases. It's just good housekeeping and can save your precious plants and trees. So like most people, I start my pruning using the 3 Ds. The dead, the damaged and the diseased. I deal with these first, and then I have a look for any branches that are crossing and maybe rubbing up against each other, and old or straggly branches, and I take them out. And this just allows the airflow throughout the plant, the shrub or the tree. And I've also pruned it back into shape. Some of these clippings will be perfect for propagating so that I can grow on some new plants. And given that all the blackcurrant bushes that I have came from one single cutting that I was given after doing some volunteer work in a community garden many years ago. And I like to pay it forward, so I like to produce new plants so that I can then pass them on to others. Before I plant these up, yesterday I took delivery of some onion sets, which I'm going to start off in modules to give them a head start, as onions can take so long to grow, and I haven't yet found a short day onion seed variety suitable for our growing zone here in the Highlands. I can remember when I didn't really focus on growing staple crops that were very cheap to buy in the shops, and I focused on the more expensive items until I came more and more concerned about the growing and spraying practices on our fresh foods. Even post-harvest treatments on our non-organic citrus fruits can contaminate our otherwise healthy foods. I reassessed my growing priorities, and gradually over time I've been growing more and more of our own staple fruits and vegetables, as well as the things that we like to eat in season, fresh from the garden. It's also part of my plan that I can plant a few extras so I can preserve some for the future, I can share some foods with others, and just in case Mother Nature has other ideas than a successful crop. I'm using my usual sieved organic peat-free compost and sand mix to get everything started, just using different ratios. For the smaller seeds, I'm starting them off in a ratio of 50-50 compost sand mix, but for the onion sets, because they're bigger, I am using a ratio of 80% compost and 20% sand. Shop bought compost is very expensive, so we need to make the absolute most of it. For anyone that is new to gardening, that have never grown onions before, onions are biannual, so they bulb in the first year and flower in the second. So I'm making sure that these newly planted onion sets are kept under fleece to keep them from freezing, as cold snap could trigger them to think that they've been through a winter and could encourage them to go to seed prematurely, which we really don't want. I could wait a while and plant these onion sets directly into the ground outside, but onions take so long to grow. I want to give them a head start, and I will plant them out once the frosts have passed. But I am direct sowing some radish seeds in the polytunnel. These are actually out-of-date seeds, but they've been stored well, so I'll give them a chance. And if they do grow, they should be mature and harvested before I'm ready to plant anything else in the polytunnel. I also grow radish in little module trays, as they're a great catch crop to use as fill-in gaps between other plants. So as the radish grows and we harvest it, the other plants are growing on to fill that space. I'm planting some seasonal seeds suitable for March in the Highlands of Scotland, including some salad leaves. And this is a new variety to me. It's called a lettuce Salanova Expertise RZ. Has anybody got any experiences of growing this salad in cooler climates? If so, can you leave a comment and let me know how you got on, please? As I've said before, it's still pretty chilly here in the Highlands of Scotland, and I'm trying not to get too excited because we've had a few days of really nice weather. But for these seeds to germinate, they'll come inside the house for a couple of weeks whilst I monitor the weather. I'm as guilty as most gardeners that get excited about the various stages of our false springs up until mid-May, as that's when our estimated last frost date is for here. So we've still got a few weeks to go yet. And as I look to close everything and tidy up after a productive day pottering, I forgot to plant up the blackcurrant cuttings. So it's a quick return to the greenhouse to trim, check and plant the new cuttings. These cuttings have about a year's worth of growth and around about the width of a thin pencil. They also have several healthy looking buds. There's no sign of any damage or diseases, and I've trimmed the ends off horizontally. I could take a few cuttings from one branch by cutting the top off at an angle and leaving a few buds for it to sprout from. I would normally water them at this stage before putting the bag on top of them, but the compost doesn't need it at the moment, so I'll just keep an eye on it. A wee plastic bag over the top of the cuttings can act as a little propagator, but make sure the bag is not touching the cuttings because it can encourage them to rot. And every so often open the bag up and give it a shake to let some of the moisture out and to keep a little bit of airflow. I almost forgot to label them, and I think that I'll always remember those random pots, but I don't, and we end up with plants called random until they start growing. But this all adds to the excitement. We'll keep an eye on them, and once the cuttings start to produce their own little buds and start rooting, then I'll pop them on into their own pots. And who doesn't like free plants? As my repottering day in the garden comes to an end, it's time for me to tidy up and head inside. So from me to you, thank you so much for being with me here today. Take care of yourself and others, and I'll see you in the next video.